Hello, everyone. Here we are. Let's get going with Ezekiel 43. We have now listened to the dimensions of the temple that the Lord has left the plans for the third and final temple via Ezekiel in the scripture for us, so that it will be rebuilt to those exact specifications. Now, if you haven't seen on my feed, I put up a short video. It's probably 6 minutes, and it's a 3D walkthrough version of this temple, and it's got beautiful music playing with it. It's really stunning, and it will give you an idea of what Ezekiel was shown, okay? And I think I said it was Ezekiel's vision that God left the blueprint. So, okay, so we're done with that now. So let's get going with Ezekiel 43. Then the man, okay, so this is still the vision, I guess. Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and pardon Ollie, he's doing his male cat calling thing that he does. You know, he's still a young male cat, so if you hear him caterwauling in the back, even though he's neutered, those instincts are strong. So he's caterwauling. So if you hear him, just let it go over your head and let's pay attention here. Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters. And we know that that's a description of when you hear God speak, it's like you hear 100 or 1,000 Niagara Falls. Okay. And the land was radiant with his glory. The vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when he came to destroy the city, and like the visions I had seen by the Kibar River, and I fell face down. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east. Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. While the man was standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. Okay, now I want you to put yourself here and imagine how this would be, okay? He said, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever." That means forever, not just during this period of time that we're reading about, forever. Because this temple is going to be rebuilt, or it's going to be built. "The people of Israel will never again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings, by their prostitution and the funeral offerings for their kings at their death. When they placed their threshold next to my threshold and their doorposts beside my doorposts, with only a wall between me and them, they defiled my holy name by their detestable practices. So I destroyed them in my anger. Now let them put away from me their prostitution and the funeral offerings for their kings, and I will live among them forever. Son of man, describe the temple to the people of Israel that they may be ashamed of their sins, because it's so magnificent. Let them consider the perfection, and if they are ashamed of all they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, its arrangement, its exits and entrances, its whole design and all its regulations and laws. Write these down before them so that they may be faithful to its design and follow all its regulations. This is the law of the temple. All the surrounding area on top of the mountain will be most holy. Such is the law of the temple. These are the measurements of the altar in long cubits, that cubit being a cubit and a handbreadth. Its gutter is a cubit deep and a cubit wide with a rim of 1 span around the edge. Okay, hold on 1 sec. Okay, you need to get down. You're a little bit rambunctious here, okay? Ollie, you need to stop, okay? Stop it. It's funny, you know, Ollie is almost 3, or he's 2.5. And it's almost like, like we're going through this whole new thing with him now. It's very strange. I say we, but I mean, well, it's all of us. It's Phantom and Sugar Baby and myself, and we're just dealing with what he's giving lately. Okay. So this is a big altar. If the trough around it is a cubit deep, that's at least 18 inches deep, 1.5 feet. All right, with a rim of 1 span around the edge, and this is the height of the altar. From the gutter on the ground up to the lower ledge that goes around the altar, it is 2 cubits high, and the ledge is a cubit wide. From this lower ledge to the upper ledge that goes around the altar, it's 4 cubits high, and that ledge is also a cubit wide. Above that, the altar hearth is 4 cubits high, and 4 horns project upward from the hearth. The altar hearth is square, 12 cubits long and 12 cubits wide. The upper ledge also is square, 14 cubits long and 14 cubits wide. All around the altar is a gutter of 1 cubit with a rim of 0.5 cubit. The steps of the altar face east. Then he said to me, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. These will be the regulations for sacrificing burnt offerings and splashing blood against the altar when it is built. You're to give a young bull as a sin offering to the Levitical priests of the family of Zadok, who come near to minister before me, declares the sovereign Lord. You are to take some of its blood and put it on the 4 horns of the altar and on the 4 corners of the upper ledge and all around the rim, and so purify the altar and make atonement for it. You are to take the bull for the sin offering and burn it in the designated part of the temple area outside the sanctuary. On the 2nd day, you're to offer a male goat without defect for a sin offering, and the altar is to be purified as it was purified with the bull. When you have finished purifying it, you're to offer a young bull and a ram from the flock, both without defect. You're to offer them before the Lord, and the priests are to sprinkle salt on them and sacrifice them as a burnt offering to the Lord. For 7 days, you're to provide a male goat daily for a sin offering. You're also to provide a young bull and a ram from the flock, both without defect. For 7 days, they are to make atonement for the altar and cleanse it. Thus they will dedicate it. At the end of these days, from the 8th day on, the priests are to present your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar. Then I will accept you, declares the Lord. Okay. I'm thinking now that this is the 2nd temple. I'm sorry, I've been saying the 3rd, which is to be built. I think this is the 2nd one, because if we remember, in the captivity, the temple, Solomon's temple, was destroyed. Okay, so this is probably the Lord preparing for when they come out of captivity. So bear with me, I'm learning too. And I think that this is the 2nd time the temple is going to be built. There will be a 3rd one, because the 2nd temple is no longer with us, okay? So I think this is the Lord telling Ezekiel, this is how I want the 2nd temple to look and to be built. So here we go. And he's telling them now how to do the sacrifices there. Okay. Ezekiel 44, Then the man brought me back to the outer gate of the sanctuary, the one facing east, and it was shut. The Lord said to me, This gate is to remain shut. It must not be opened. No one may enter through it. It's to remain shut because the Lord, the God of Israel, has entered through it. The prince himself is the only one who may sit inside the gateway to eat in the presence of the Lord. He is to enter by way of the portico of the gateway and go out the same way. Then the man brought me by way of the north gate to the front of the temple. I looked and saw the glory of the Lord filling the temple of the Lord, and I fell face down. The Lord said to me, Son of man, look carefully, listen closely, and give attention to everything I tell you concerning all the regulations and instructions regarding the temple of the Lord. Give attention to the entrance to the temple and all the exits of the sanctuary. Say to rebellious Israel, This is what the sovereign Lord says. Enough of your detestable practices, people of Israel. In addition to all your other detestable practices, you brought foreigners, uncircumcised in heart, not their flesh, in heart and flesh, into my sanctuary, desecrating my temple while you offered me food, fat, and blood, and you broke my covenant. Instead of carrying out your duty in regard to my holy things, you put others in charge of my sanctuary. This is what the sovereign Lord says. No foreigner, uncircumcised in heart and flesh, is to enter my sanctuary, not even the foreigners who live among the Israelites. The Levites who went far from me when Israel went astray and who wandered from me after their idols must bear the consequences of their sin. And remember, we bear consequences. We live in a society where people act like they never have to take the consequences, and we do, okay? They may serve in my sanctuary, having charge of the gates of the temple and serving in it. They may slaughter the burnt offerings and sacrifices for the people and stand before the people and serve them. But because they served them in the presence of their idols and made the people of Israel fall into sin, therefore I have sworn with uplifted hand that they must bear the consequences of their sin, declares the sovereign Lord. They are not to come near to serve me as priests or come near any of my holy things or my most holy offerings. They must bear the shame of their detestable practices. And I will appoint them to guard the temple for all the work that is to be done in it. But the Levitical priests, who are descendants of Zadok and who guarded my sanctuary when the Israelites went astray from me, are to come near to minister before me. They are to stand before me to offer sacrifices of fat and blood, declares the sovereign Lord. They alone are to enter my sanctuary. They alone are to come near my table to minister before me and serve as guards. When they enter the gates of the inner court, they're to wear linen clothes. They must not wear any woolen garment while ministering at the gates of the inner court or inside the temple. They are to wear linen turbans on their heads and linen undergarments around their waists. They must not wear anything that makes them perspire. When they go out into the outer court where the people are, they are to take off the clothes they've been ministering in and are to leave them in the sacred rooms and put on other clothes so that the people are not consecrated through contact with their garments. They must not shave their heads or let their hair grow long, but they're to keep their hair, the hair of their heads, trimmed. No priest is to drink wine when he enters the inner court. They must not marry widows or divorced women. They may marry only virgins of Israelite descent or widows of priests. Okay, so a woman that's already been the wife of a priest can be taken by another priest. Now, what's interesting about this is there's no rule here about priests not being married, much like the Catholic Church has done. Okay, that's not at all how the Lord set it up. They were allowed to marry, and of course, I think there's wisdom in that. Not everybody is called to a life of abstinence or pure celibacy. I'm called right now to a life of abstinence, but I'm not called to celibacy simply because I've had children or I had a daughter. Okay, a celibate would never ever get to a place where they were involved and they had children. A true celibate doesn't have any of those feelings for other people. Okay, an abstinent person is just someone who is abstaining out of reverence for God, and that would be my situation. Okay, it's not always pleasant. I mean, at this age, at 64, almost 65 in another 6 weeks, it's not so much the physical part, it's companionship that I would like to have. But I'm not so sure that marriage is the right thing for me just to have that. I mean, I've been alone for so long and been abstinent that I'm pretty used to it. And, you know, when I was younger, the physical side of abstinence was difficult, but because I was relying on the Lord's strength every day, I was able to do it. And like every muscle gets stronger when you work it out, just like being abstinent from drinking or drugs, it's the same thing. Of course, it's not in the same category. Sex is an instinct, okay? Drinking and drugging is not an instinct. But it's the same process of exercising your will to the point where you become strong in it, but the strength comes from the Lord. And I don't know if I'm making that clear. It's like you become strong in your practice. Your practice becomes strong of your practice of what you've chosen to do. Okay. But I think to get to this point, the Lord's strength was in there. Because, I have been abstinent for a long time, and I just generally don't speak about it because I don't want to scare young Christian women who want to be married, and they look at me and go, oh no, I don't want to end up like that. It's not bad, but it's given to those who can do it. Okay. If you really couldn't do what the Lord has me doing, it's not going to happen to you. Okay. It's not just like, oops, I missed getting married. No. If you're meant to be married, you're going to get married. And if the Lord had, I'm not going to say I can't be married, but I'm going to say that it's not the call on my life and hasn't been for a long time. Okay. When I say a long time, I started this journey at 30. Okay. So I've been alone for a long time, and it's all good. All right. Don't feel bad or say, oh, she's missing. I'm not missing out on anything, guys. Okay. It's not being abstinent from sexual behavior is not what you think it is. If you're called to it, even Jesus said, and we'll get there in the New Testament, he said, let those who can do it, do it. Okay. So I can do it. I mean, in the Lord's strength. I mean, it's something that my mind actually could make that decision and do it. And I'm comfortable in this calling. It's interesting, considering who I used to be. I see it as a very deep cleansing. I see it as an incredible cleansing of my whole life. And I think I think it had to happen because all of the physical stuff in my life came sideways and backwards, and there was no health in any of it. Okay. So I think this is a really beautiful thing. And the only problem that I have with it at this point is that sometimes I do get lonely for partnership. Like I say, I'm not a celibate, I'm abstinent. There's a difference. Okay. So let's pick it back up. So he's telling the priests you can marry virgin women of Israel only, or you can marry widows that have been married to priests only. Okay. Let me find where I was. Okay. Okay. Where was I? They are to wear linen turbans on their heads. They cannot perspire. They must shave their heads or let their hair grow long, but they're to keep the hair of their heads trimmed. No priest will drink wine. Here we are. They are to teach my people the difference between the holy and the common, and show them how to distinguish between the unclean and the clean. In any dispute, the priests are to serve as judges and decide it according to my ordinances. They are to keep my laws and my decrees for all my appointed festivals, and they're to keep my Sabbaths holy. A priest must not defile himself by going near a dead person. However, if the dead person was his father or mother, son or daughter, brother or unmarried sister, then he may defile himself. After he is cleansed, he must wait 7 days. On the day he goes into the inner court of the sanctuary to minister in the sanctuary, he's to offer a sin offering for himself, declares the sovereign Lord. I am to be the only inheritance the priests have. You are to give them no possession in Israel. I will be their possession, See, to me, that's a worthy trade-off. I'd much rather have God, okay? They will eat the grain. And see, that's the thing about my abstinence. When you abstain from anything, you get very close to God. Now, I only know God as much as he's allowed me to know him, okay? It's a growing thing. And it's not like I've had all God's holiness just dumped on me and I'm walking 10 feet above that. Not at all, okay? What it means is I have a very close relationship with God in the way that I know God, to the degree I know God. And you know what? I would rather have that. I mean, if it was put before me, sex and a relationship with God, I would choose the relationship with God. There's no contest, okay? That's not me being somebody distinctly special. That's me having had this relationship with God, knowing its worth. Okay, I know its worth. Okay. They will eat the grain offerings. This is about the priests whose inheritance is the Lord. The sin offerings and the guilt offerings and everything in Israel devoted to the Lord will belong to them. The best of all the first fruits and of all your special gifts will belong to the priests. And see, this is what I'm saying. Well, you don't get possessions, but you get the best of everything. You get the best of the first fruits. And of all your special gifts will belong to the priests. That's what I want. Nothing here can compare with that, okay? And I have experience at this point. You are to give them the first portion of your ground meal, so that a blessing may rest on your household. The priests must not eat anything, whether bird or animal found dead or torn by wild animals. Okay. All right, this one is not long. This is 45. When you allot the land as an inheritance, you're to present to the Lord a portion of the land as a sacred district, 25,000 cubits long and 20,000 cubits wide. The entire area will be holy. Of this, a section 500 cubits square is to be for the sanctuary, with 50 cubits around it for open land. In the sacred district, measure off a section 25,000 cubits long and 10,000 cubits wide. In it will be the sanctuary, the most holy place. It will be the sacred portion of the land for the priests who minister in the sanctuary and who draw near to minister before the Lord. It will be a place for their houses as well as a holy place for the sanctuary. An area 25,000 cubits long and 10,000 cubits wide will belong to the Levites who serve in the temple as their possession for towns to live in. You're to give the city as its property an area 5,000 cubits wide, 25,000 cubits long, adjoining the sacred portion. It will belong to all Israel. The prince will have the land bordering each side of the area formed by the sacred district and the property of the city. It will extend westward from the west side and eastward from the east side, running lengthwise from the western to eastern border, parallel to one of the tribal portions. This land will be his possession in Israel, and my princes will no longer oppress my people, but will allow the people of Israel to possess the land according to their tribes. So there's going to be some good leaders coming. This is what the sovereign Lord says. You've gone far enough, princes of Israel. Give up your violence and oppression and do what is just and right. Stop dispossessing my people, declares the sovereign Lord. You're to use accurate scales, an accurate ephah, and an accurate bath. And remember, those were units of measurement that we looked at way back. The ephah and the bath are to be the same size. The bath containing 1/10 of a homer and the ephah 1/10 of a homer. The homer is to be the standard measure for both. The shekel is to consist of 20 gerahs, Gerahs. 20 shekels plus 25 shekels plus 15 shekels equal 1 mina, M-I-N-A. So I don't know if the Lord is restructuring their currency here or what. This is the special, but this is the way it is from this point on. This is the special gift you're to offer: 1/6 of an ephah from each homer of wheat and 1/6 of an ephah from each homer of barley. The prescribed portion of olive oil measured by the bath is 1/10 of a bath. From each cor, C-O-R, which consists of 10 baths or 1 homer, for 10 baths are equivalent to a homer. Also, 1 sheep is to be taken from every flock of 200 from the well-watered pastures of Israel. These will be used for the grain offerings, burnt offerings, and fellowship offerings to make atonement for the people, declares the sovereign Lord. So it's almost like he's redoing this with Israel. We went through all this way back in Moses' day, if you remember. And now here he is structuring it again and laying it out before them. All the people of the land will be required to give this special offering to the prince in Israel. It will be the duty of the prince to provide the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and drink offerings at the festivals, the new moons and the Sabbaths at all the appointed festivals of Israel. He will provide the sin offerings, grain offerings, burnt offerings, and fellowship offerings to make atonement for the Israelites. So he's going to provide the bulls, the rams, the sheep, the goats, and anything else. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Grain offerings would be grain. Okay, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the first month, on the first day, you're to take a young bull without defect and purify the sanctuary. The priest is to take some of the blood of the sin offering and put it on the doorposts of the temple, on the 4 corners of the upper ledge of the altar, and on the gateposts of the inner court. You're to do the same on the 7th day of the month for anyone who sins unintentionally or through ignorance. So you are to make atonement for the temple. In the first month of the 14th day, you're to observe the Passover, a festival lasting 7 days, during which you shall eat bread made without yeast. On that day, the prince is to provide a bull as a sin offering for himself and for all the people of the land. Every day during the 7 days of the festival, he's to provide 7 bulls and 7 rams without defect as a burnt offering to the Lord, and a male goat for a sin offering. He's to provide as a grain offering an ephah for each bull and an ephah for each ram, along with a hin of olive oil for each ephah. During the 7 days of the festival, which begins in the 7th month on the 15th day, he's to make the same provision for sin offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, and oil. Okay, now remember, they do all this because there's no Jesus yet. There's no final offering. And we remember that the life is in the blood, and what atones for sin in front of a holy God is blood, the blood of an animal, okay? Life for life, okay? Our sin is what must be atoned for, and these animals die for us, okay? But God is going to give his only son. I also want to say this before I let you go. We are almost out of the Old Testament, okay? Amazingly enough. We have, I think, let's see, 43, 45. I think we have about 3 more chapters left in this book. And then after that, we have 12 short books. There's nothing that's overly long coming up. So we'll be in the New Testament. And when we get there, we will see the place where the apostles say to Jesus, "Who can do this?" And Jesus said, "Yes, this is a hard saying, but let those who can do it, do it." And he was talking about marriage and abstinence and, presenting your body as a living sacrifice. So anyway, I love you very much, and I will see you tomorrow. We'll pick it up with Isaiah 46, and we'll finish 46, 47, and 48. Love you. Good night.